It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. A record start to the year for migrants crossing the Channel. We follow a family prepared to risk everything to make the journey.
How does the UK stop people from coming on that route?
You can't stop it. You can't stop it. This is smuggling and it will continue.
Also tonight, sewage spills in England more than double as we reveal crunch talks on the future of Thames Water. He should have been protected. How COVID lockdowns contributed to the death of 10-month-old Finley Boden, killed by his parents. Claims the church has been brought into disrepute for its role in helping Abdulazidi to be granted asylum in the UK. The ongoing operation to recover bodies after the Baltimore bridge collapse, as President Biden pledges to move heaven and earth to help the rebuild. The 20-year-old with the world at his feet, we speak to England and Real Madrid star Jude Bellingham. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. The Prime Minister has made stopping small boats crossing the Channel a fundamental test of his authority. The government's Rwanda bill, currently bogged down in Parliament, is heralded as their solution. But today came new data which shows that, while politicians continue to debate, the flow of people attempting the journey continues unabated. Well, 338 migrants arrived in the UK on small boats yesterday. That brings the total for the year to date to 4,644, and that is the highest number for the first quarter since records began. The previous record was for the first 3 months of 2022, when 4,548 people crossed. Our Europe correspondent, Siobhan Robbins, followed in the footsteps of one of the families who have risked their lives and the threat of being deported to Rwanda to make that journey.
In this hostel in France, the atmosphere is nervous. A father and his family are waiting for a call. A sign sea conditions are right. It's finally time to go. After fleeing from Kurdistan, this is what lies ahead. A potentially fatal crossing to the UK, provided by smugglers who value money over life.
We don't have any other option except this dinghy. The surveillance for the trucks crossing the Channel is very strong, and that is why we have to take this journey. We will either die or succeed.
To tell their stories safely, they're in disguise and we've changed their names. The UK wasn't their destination of choice. For years, Germany was their home, but then, threatened with deportation, last month they ran again, ripping teenager Sarah away from her friends and school.
I really miss it. I mean, the days where I go to school, this is now 2 months ago. When I thought about that, I was like, I can go to school. This makes me pretty sad.
Despite promises to stop the boats, a record number of migrants have crossed the Channel this year. Last week, the family joined them, cramming into a rickety vessel with 60 others, low on fuel and life jackets.
It was a difficult and dangerous journey that no one was expecting to survive. We were all thinking that our lives would end in a matter of seconds.
Children, we had 4, they were crying, so I was like, please God save us, and I was very scared to die.
Now in the UK, they wait to hear their fate. Fresh threats of deportation or being sent to Rwanda weren't a deterrent.
How does the UK stop people from coming on that route?
You can't stop it. You can't stop it. This is smuggling and it will continue.
This family hopes they can stay. It isn't a guarantee. And while the UK wasn't their first choice, they say it's their last hope. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News.
Well, our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, is in Downing Street for us this evening. So record figures again, Sam. Have today's numbers changed the political mood at all?
Well, Anna, I've been talking to Tory MPs, to members of the government, and if there is particular panic or disquiet about today's record-breaking figures, which of course suggest that Rishi Sunak's promise is out of reach to stop the boats at the moment, I bluntly couldn't detect it. But at the same time, I am being told that Tory MPs know that a crunch point is coming. And here's why. It's increasingly the expectation in Westminster that actually the legislation to enable flights to Rwanda will pass. And actually there is now an increasing chance that those flights will take off. And at that point, the great big philosophy of the government's Rwanda plan is put to the test. Will the actual plan deter people from coming to the UK in the first place? And that's where Siobhan Robbins' report was interesting. Deterrence, clearly from her report, does matter. It was the threat of being deported from Germany back to Kurdistan that meant that the family that she was following left and fled and started to make their journey to the UK. And they were not deterred either by the danger of the journey, or they claimed what the Rwanda legislation would mean in practice, though of course it isn't in place at the moment. And that is the great fear of the Conservative Party. If this plan that they have fought very hard to implement doesn't actually do what they hoped and deter people from coming to the UK in an election year, they don't know what happens next.
Sam Coates in Downing Street, thank you. Raw sewage being dumped into English waterways more than doubled in 2023, making it the worst year since records began. That is piling the pressure on both the government and water companies to take action. In a moment, we'll hear about a potential crisis facing Thames Water. But first, here's our business correspondent, Paul Kelso.
It's the Oxford-Cambridge boat race on the Thames in London this weekend, but there'll be no prizes for anyone taking a dip.
It's a machine which tells us how much E. coli is in the water sample that we're taking.
Okay.
River campaigners have detected dangerous levels of E. coli in the water, and they're warning competitors to take care.
In here, we want less than 1,000. What I've been finding is about 3,000 on average. At its highest spike, about 10,000.
10 times safe levels.
10 times the amount than safe bathing water.
The view from Fulham is matched across England as sewage discharges into rivers and seas reached record levels last year. The Environment Agency measures sewage discharged from every storm overflow in England. It found the total duration of sewage spills more than doubled from 1.7 million hours to over 3.6 million in 2023. And the total number of spills rose by more than half, from 301,000 to more than 460,000.
After many years of underinvestment from water companies and a 70% funding cut of the Environment Agency's budget, it means they can do whatever they want. And in this case, it means an increase of 100% year on year, which means that river users and communities up and downstream along the Thames are extremely at risk.
Sewage discharges happen when wastewater and rainwater sharing the same pipes have nowhere else to go. Changing that will cost billions and take decades. Water companies say we will have to pay for it.
We have not been investing as much as we should because bills have been kept too low. Bill rises are never welcome, but sadly they will now be needed in order to help facilitate the investment that is vital to make sure our network can withstand the pressures of climate change and population growth.
So this is sewage running out here.
Britain is unique in having an almost entirely privatised water industry, giving companies and their investors monopoly control of a vital resource.
The water industry says it will invest tens of billions of pounds over the next decade if it can guarantee investors that customer bills will go up and fines for polluting rivers and seas don't get too high. That leaves regulators and the government facing a choice about how hard to squeeze the privatised industry to do its job.
Regulator Ofwat will decide how high bills can rise in the summer. The public will settle for investors who've cleaned up for decades to do the same for our rivers. Paul Kelso, Sky News.
Well, tonight there are serious concerns about the future of the biggest of those water companies. Our city editor, Mark Kleinman, joins us live from central London. So it's Thames Water we're talking about, Mark. What have you learned and how precarious is it looking now for the company?
Well, Anna, Thames Water has been in a precarious financial state for months. It's Britain's biggest water company, it has 15 million customers, but it's drowning under more than £18 billion of debt. So in recent months, the board of Thames Water has been talking to the industry regulator, Ofwat, about some concessions that would allow it to repair its balance sheet. These would include hiking customers' bills by 40% and the regulator going easy on it in terms of the fines that it's going to impose for its dire track record on sewage spills. Now today, the board of Thames Water met for crunch talks about its future because last year the shareholders in the company said that they would inject more than £3 billion over the coming years, including £750 million this year. The shareholders have gone cold on that idea, Anna, and they have told the company that they are not now minded to inject the money that Thames Water needs to survive. Now this matters here in Westminster because if Thames Water cannot raise the money privately to keep itself as a going concern, it's going to fall into something called special administration. That's only been used once before when the energy company Bulb collapsed a few years ago. Thames Water is a massive company by comparison. It would cost the taxpayer billions of pounds to support it during a temporary nationalisation. And of course, if that happens this year, in the run-up to an election, that is yet another political headache for the Rishi Sunak government. I should be clear, Thames Water is not tonight on the brink of collapse, but when we get a statement tomorrow morning from the company saying its shareholders are no longer willing to put that money in to the company to keep it afloat, it's going to raise all sorts of questions about Thames Water's future.
More coverage, of course, from you then. Mark, thank you. Well, some breaking news in the last few minutes. The bodies of 2 people who were working on the Baltimore Bridge at the time of its collapse have now been recovered, officials have just revealed. 4 remain missing. Divers searching the wreckage have now recovered the black box from the ship, which crashed into it. President Biden has pledged to move heaven and earth to aid in the recovery and rebuilding of the bridge. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner reports now from Baltimore.
It's a grim day for the grimmest of missions. Specialist divers now in these waters searching for the bodies of 6 men still missing, presumed dead. Among them, 49-year-old Miguel Luna, a father of 6 originally from Mexico, and Maynor Suazo, a 37-year-old father of 2. His sister says he was the driving force of their family.
I think he was the best brother ever. He gave us strength for everything. I only ask that God finds him. That's all we ask.
18 hours into the search as the rescue operation became recovery, the ship's black box was found. Investigators hope it will help determine what caused this tragedy.
I need one of you guys on the south side, one of you guys.
Police audio from the minutes before the disaster reveals the efforts to try and shut the bridge after the ship crew issued a frantic mayday call.
There's a ship approaching that just lost their steering. So until you get that under control, we got to stop all traffic. Yeah, if we can stop traffic, just make sure no one's on the bridge right now.
I said to myself, why is the boat right there?
As police raced to close the bridge, Terry, on her way back from work, was still on it.
I got to the bottom at exactly 1:29, and I heard an explosion, and I thought maybe I blew a tire. And when I looked back, I seen the bridge collapsing.
You saw the construction workers, though?
I did see them. I hurried up and went past them.
You must have been one of the last people to see them alive.
Yeah, I was. I'm really in shock. Like, I'm devastated. I'm in shock. I feel sad for the family. It could have been me.
It's a treacherous mission for the divers searching for the missing in these waters. Not only are conditions changeable, visibility beneath the surface is almost zero, and they're having to avoid the mangled metal and debris from the bridge and the ship. They're being watched all the time by the crew of 22 aboard the Dali, stranded on the vessel until it can be moved. Andrew, how long is the crew likely to be stuck on that ship for?
I'm going to venture to say at least several weeks.
Andrew is acting as a liaison officer for the crew.
I was actually just messaging with one of the crew now, and they're expressing the need for communication. So, my response was, I'll work on it, and the biggest hurdle will be getting it out to them while they're still sitting in the river.
Even after this cargo ship can be transported, the White House warned of a long and difficult path to full recovery for Baltimore. For those who have lost loved ones, it won't be that easy. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Baltimore.
And Martha joins us now from Baltimore, where a briefing has been underway. Martha, tell us more.
Yeah, I was just reflecting in my piece there about how difficult a search it is for the divers who are entering this water. They really are risking life and limb to do so. They resumed their search here at 6 a.m. this morning. We've just had word from the Maryland State Police, from Colonel Ronald Butler, that 2 bodies have been found in the water here. They are 2 men aged 35 and 26. They were found in a red pickup truck submerged beneath 25 feet of water. And that tallies with what I've been hearing from friends and colleagues of the men who are missing, presumed dead. They were saying that many of them were inside their vehicles at the time of the bridge collapse, having a short break from work. So that tallies with it. The search and rescue teams say they are looking for people inside vehicles. Just to give you the latest line from the Maryland State Police Chief, he said, "We've exhausted all search efforts in the area around this wreckage, and based on sonar scans," so those are the scans which detect objects underneath the water, he said, "we firmly believe that the vehicles are encased in the superstructure and concrete that we tragically saw come down." So I think that gives you an idea of just how complicated the search here is, that the initial stage around the wreckage is complete. Now comes the stage of the search, which will involve entering this mangled metal and debris behind me.
Martha, updating us there from Baltimore. Thank you. Well, as the recovery operation and investigation, of course, continues, the Port of Baltimore will be shut until further notice, with the US Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg warning of potential for a major and protracted impact to supply chains. Here's our business correspondent, Adele Robinson.
The Baltimore Bridge collapse is a tragedy for everyone caught up in it, but has also put one of America's key ports out of action. The port is vast and over 300 years old. Before the collapse, it welcomed some of the biggest container ships in the world, as well as some cruise liners. With bridge debris blocking the harbour, at least 11 major ships are stuck inside, including 4 US Navy vessels. But it's the impact on goods that will be the biggest. Baltimore is the 17th busiest port in the US. Last year, ships travelled to and from 29 countries to access the port, carrying over 50 million tonnes of cargo worth £64.6 billion. For context, that's more than Felixstowe, one of the UK's largest container ports. But the key issue is the specific goods that Baltimore handles. One of the most important is this slither: vehicles and spare parts, which is worth almost £28 billion. Baltimore was the busiest US port for car shipments, handling more than 750,000 vehicles last year. The port's other major cargo was coal, around 3/4 of which went to India and around 1% the UK. Experts say that may be the biggest issue.
Baltimore is not the biggest transshipment hub in the US, and things can divert relatively easily. It'll be expensive, it will cause disruption, but shipping and logistics will work around that. Perhaps more significant is Baltimore's status as a coal export hub. Actually, it accounts for around 2% of global seaborne coal coming out of it. So, you could be looking at between 1.5 to 3 million tons of coal coming out of that port every month. That's going to be more difficult to divert.
Vessels are already being diverted to other ports on the East Coast, including New York and New Jersey, Philadelphia and Wilmington. As with any disruption in supply chains, this will cost money, but will limit the impact on the global economy. Meanwhile, the financial ramifications of the bridge collapse may be significant. President Biden's pledged it will be rebuilt at speed, but experts say it will take years, not months, costing hundreds of millions of dollars.
Adele Robinson there. Now, a review into the murder of a 10-month-old baby boy has revealed the list of missed opportunities for the authorities to save his life. Finley Boden was murdered by his parents on Christmas Day in 2020, less than 2 months after being returned to their care. The review details how key social workers were off work or shielding during the COVID pandemic, which meant they didn't make home visits. Sky's Fraser Maud reports.
Finley Boden should have been one of the most protected children in his local authority area. Yet inadequate safeguarding by social services meant he was allowed to live with the parents who eventually killed him. Just 10 months old when he died on Christmas Day 2020, Finley had over 130 injuries on his body, including broken bones and bruises. His parents, Shannon Marsden and Stephen Boden, were jailed for life for his murder. Both were known drug users, and Boden had a history of domestic abuse. Today, a review into Finley's death said that professional interventions should have protected him.
There were significant mitigating circumstances in the period leading up to Finley's death. The COVID lockdowns, the very restricted access, unfamiliar working circumstances and remote meetings, and parental dishonesty and disengagement. However, these are not excuses.
Inside the family home, the conditions were squalid. A mouldy milk bottle in Finley's room, just one of the warning signs missed by Derbyshire County Council's Children's Services. It says although COVID restrictions had a significant impact on its ability to work with the family, there were missed opportunities.
For anybody in Children's Services, it's the worst possible thing that can happen. It's an absolutely dreadful thing. And it absolutely was impacted by the pandemic. There's no doubt about that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we needed also to strengthen our processes, which we have.
The review said the most significant professional decision was that Finley should be allowed to live with his parents. The review found that the safeguarding environment in which that decision was made had been incrementally weakened by decisions, actions, circumstances and events which had preceded it. Tragically, the review concluded that what had been experienced by Finley in the final weeks of his life was unknown to the professionals who were working with the family at that time. The review has made 11 recommendations, but when asked if they'll prevent another child suffering like Finley did, the sad but pragmatic response was we can never say never. Fraser Maud, Sky News, Derbyshire.
A leading Christian campaign group has said that the system for vetting asylum seekers who are basing their claim on having converted to Christianity needs to be strengthened. It comes after Sky News obtained documents showing the detailed arguments for why Abdul Azidi was granted asylum in the UK, despite being a convicted sex offender. He went on to attack a woman and 2 children with a chemical in South London in January. Sky's communities correspondent Becky Johnson has this report.
Abdul Azidi was granted asylum on the word of the vicar who baptised him. Court documents reveal Azidi's sex offence convictions were barely mentioned in his asylum appeal hearing. The focus was his claim to have converted to Christianity, but he couldn't even answer simple questions about the religion. A record of a Home Office interview revealed Azidi could only name 4 of the 12 disciples of Jesus. When asked what the Bible says God created on the 3rd day, he replied, Good Friday and Easter Sunday and Resurrection Day.
That should count against him.
The campaign group Christian Concern believes the church has been damaged by its support of Azidi.
I think, sadly, this kind of thing has brought the church into disrepute because it's seen that the church has helped some people whose claim to asylum isn't justified and they haven't actually genuinely converted.
His organisation publicly backs other asylum seekers, like this Iranian man.
Jesus, give me a life.
But believes proof of conversion must be more rigorous. So what more do churches need to do to check?
In the baptisms, somebody who's a convert ought to renounce their form of faith. They ought to have to say something like, I renounce Islam, I renounce Muhammad, he's not a prophet. And that would be harder for somebody who's a fake convert to publicly state.
Ezidi's immigration history came to light after he carried out this chemical attack in Clapham in January. Following that, the Home Secretary met church leaders to raise his concerns, with senior clergy forced to defend themselves in Parliament earlier this month.
Questions about whether taxpayers are being scammed by the government, others saying that, you attend Mass once a week for a few months and bingo, you're signed off by a member of the clergy. It's just not true.
But answers are being demanded from the Home Office too. In 2017, Ezidi's first asylum attempt was refused, but he wasn't removed from the UK. And in 2018, when he was convicted of sexual assault and exposure, his sentence wasn't long enough for immediate deportation. That meant he could stay and was baptised as a Christian to make a new asylum claim, which was rejected by the Home Office in 2020, but granted on appeal later that year. Now we know why that decision was made. Questions remain about whether the system that allowed this man to remain in Britain is fit for purpose. Becky Johnson, Sky News.
A warning, the pictures you are about to see are disturbing. British Transport Police are appealing for witnesses after footage was posted online of a man being stabbed on a moving train in southeast London. Well, he is understood to be in a life-threatening condition. The train was travelling between Shortlands and Beckenham, heading towards London Victoria. Police say the two men were seen fighting while boarding the train. The Israeli military has admitted it fired at a building where 2 civilians died following a Sky News investigation into an attack on an aid shelter in Gaza. Several other people were injured in the incident, all family members of staff working for the charity Médecins Sans Frontières. Well, Sky News' data and forensics unit pieced together how the event unfolded using video of the immediate aftermath of the event, as well as photos and witness accounts. Tom Cheshire has this report.
The tank shell has ignited a gas canister. Be careful of the gas cylinder, he says. It's going to blow up. This video, obtained exclusively by Sky News, shows the immediate aftermath of an attack on an aid shelter in Gaza. 2 women were killed. 7 people were injured, including twin babies and 2 teenage girls whose faces were badly burned. All but 1 were from the same family. We've analysed troves of imagery, spoke to witnesses and teamed up with weapons experts to study the blast damage and piece together how the incident unfolded. The Israeli military had not previously acknowledged the incident, but in response to our investigation, it has now acknowledged that it did fire at a building where, it says, terror activity was occurring and that civilians were killed. The building where those people died was clearly occupied by the international aid group Médecins Sans Frontières, or MSF, which rejects the allegation of terror. It's in a sparsely populated area in Al-Mawasi in southern Gaza. More than 60 people, including aid workers and their families, were sheltering in the building when it was hit. We couldn't independently verify exactly where the projectile was fired from, but witnesses told us the tanks came from the south and drove up north. Damage on the building showed the shelter was hit on its southern side. Here we can see clearly that it went through a first-floor window. We put our findings to weapons analysts to understand what the damage can tell us about the attack. They said that whatever came through the window detonated as it hit the ceiling or exploded just below. The impact on the wall next to the window suggests it was blown outwards. One munitions expert said the damage is consistent with that of a tank shell. A collection of fragments was found in the room the projectile was fired into. Our analysts confirmed these are clearly fragments from the body of a high-caliber tank shell. Bassam lives nearby, and he told us he saw a big light appear when the building was first hit and heard gunfire. He said the tanks left behind a cloud of dust. MSF told us that Israeli authorities knew of the shelter's whereabouts.
We notified the GPS coordinates to the Israeli army to say, this is a medical structure. Our staff saw the tanks coming. Without any warning, a shell entered the building, exploded and killed 2 people on the spot, with no justification.
We put all those allegations to the IDF, who gave us this statement. During operational activity in Khan Yunis, the IDF forces fired at a building that was identified as a building where terror activity is occurring. After the incident, reports were received of the death of 2 uninvolved civilians in the area. The IDF regrets any harm to civilians and does everything in its power to operate in a precise and accurate manner in the combat field. The IDF has said they're conducting their own investigation into the incident.
There are a number of questions that are going to have to be asked. Did they, in fact, have a legitimate military objective? What was the intelligence that they had, if any, that this was being used for military purposes?
MSF says it's committed to staying and continuing its work in Gaza. The shelter has been evacuated and staff have relocated.
But if this building, known to the IDF, clearly marked and relatively isolated, wasn't safe, it's hard to think where else possibly could be. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.
Now, Gareth Southgate is yet to name his England squad heading to the European Championships, but one man who will be top of that list is Jude Bellingham, who scored in last night's friendly against Belgium. He is only 20, but is fast acquiring talismanic status to the team and their fans. And he's been speaking to our sports correspondent, Rob Harris.
Just 20 years old, already the poster boy for English football.
Hey, great to see you.
How's things, all good?
Yeah, well, good for you last night. Yeah, not too bad, not too bad.
Jude Bellingham meeting Sky News for an exclusive interview the day after scoring his first Wembley goal. This salvaged a draw against Belgium with the last kick of the friendly. The build-up to the big one, the Euros this summer in Germany.
I want the fans to feel like I'm another fan playing and representing them, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And yeah, if they can see me and see someone that they can relate to and support, then it's going to help the support of the team as well. And you know, their support means a lot to us, more than they probably believe. So when the country's positive and when the fans are positive, the team will play better.
Bellingham has already been part of a squad that reached a Euros final and then a World Cup quarter-final. Far removed from being an England fan, growing up watching the England men's misery.
I always remember watching the games with my family, to be fair. I remember kind of going out to Iceland, Italy, and that was probably my two earliest ones until I kind of played in the next one. So yeah, not the best memories from the perspective of an England fan, but all round it was really fun.
He's certainly adventurous, leaving Birmingham as a 17-year-old for Germany.
Are we seeing the birth of a new start?
Growing at Borussia Dortmund.
Jude Bellingham!
Before joining the kings of European football, thriving immediately in the pressurised environment of Real Madrid with 20 goals in 31 games so far.
What do you think for you will be success when you sort of look back? Trophies, I think. Trophies, being able to give my country and my team, Real Madrid, great experiences and great memories of lifting trophies.
The kids at this fun football initiative keen to know who'll be joining him next season.
And then Mbappe might be coming to Madrid.
Could be, yeah.
Here encouraging the next generation, ensuring those particularly with disabilities have access to football.
I think what we're seeing more of now is diversity in football, which is so important. You know, gender, race, all those kind of things doesn't matter, and it shouldn't matter when it comes to playing football.
On the pitch, Jude Bellingham already has the swagger of a superstar, on the path to becoming an all-time great. Rob Harris, Sky News, Surrey.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined by the Daily Mirror's Associate Editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail's Whitehall Editor, Claire Ellicott. Welcome to both of you. And certainly among the stories we will be discussing, this on the front of your paper, The Mail. Could Rishi gamble on a summer election? We wonder. Back with that in just a moment. Well, just to bring you some breaking news, in the last few minutes, Buckingham Palace has released a new picture of the King ahead of his Easter message. His Majesty is expected to stress the importance of acts of friendship, especially in a time of need. Well, the audio message will be his first public word since his, and indeed the Princess of Wales's, cancer diagnoses. It will be broadcast in his absence at a Royal Maunday service at Worcester Cathedral tomorrow. He's expected to attend the Easter Sunday service at St George's Chapel at Windsor Castle this weekend. Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail's Whitehall editor, Claire Ellicott. Welcome to both of you. So, as ever, let's take a look at the front pages, starting with Claire's paper, The Mail, which says that people close to Rishi Sunak are urging him to go for a general election this summer. Meanwhile, The Times leads with the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, praising Boris Johnson for his work on levelling up, which he says Rishi Sunak has killed. The Metro describes baby Finley Boden, who was murdered by his parents, as having been totally failed. The Eye leads with an attack by water campaigners on Labour's feeble plans to tackle Britain's sewage crisis. The Guardian says there's widespread anger at the record sewage discharges reported today. The Express says King Charles will call for more kindness in times of need in his Easter message as he prepares to deliver his first public address since he and the Princess of Wales revealed they are both receiving cancer treatment. That message from the King is also top story in the Daily Telegraph, along with that new picture just released by Buckingham Palace. And The Day I Lost My Paul, Kevin's paper, The Daily Mirror, leads on their exclusive interview with entertainer Paul O'Grady's husband on the anniversary of his death. Well, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch our guests. So let's head to them. Kevin Maguire and Claire Ellicott, welcome to both of you. Should we kick off with your paper? As we all sit there wondering what can happen to our summer holidays. Anyway, what do they mean by summer when they suggest a general election in the summer?
So what I'm hearing is that the people around Rishi Sunak are saying that the fragile truce, the Tories, among his rest of Tory MPs, is not going to hold until autumn, which is, I'm sure, when he wants to hold the election, because the economy will be better. He may have had a chance to fulfil many of his 5 pledges, but the reality is that things feel febrile. There's so much talk of confidence letters, him facing a vote. Can things really hold together until then? He's lost 2 very loyal ministers just yesterday, and he's, I think, 63 Tory MPs standing down now. There's a feeling of malaise in the party, and the Tories are going to have to make a decision. Do they cut their losses? Do they go now? Is anything going to change? They're actually going down in the polls, even though they've attempted lots of tax cuts. Is there anything really going to change if they leave it to the autumn? So this is the brief that, you know, Rishi Sunak's being urged by his advisors, those around him. They're saying that, you know, you should go now, you should go in the summer.
What does the summer mean?
So June or July.
June or July.
June or July, yeah. So July is the sort of suggestion.
It's got to be before, you know, schools break up and people go on holiday,
exactly.
Though, doesn't it, actually? So the timing is quite significant, but it's fascinating. And once you start losing ministers, 2 respected ones, you know, announcing they were standing down, forced a mini reshuffle, didn't it? You can't have too many more of those, can you?
No, your authority's going in. Look, it's Claire, the Mail's illustrated your story with 2 voters there, you know, getting ready to vote. I remember they take their ID, their approved ID, but there's quite a significant number of Tory MPs think Sunak's made a mistake not going in May. And that it won't. It is. So many of them are resigned to lose, and they think it's damage limitation, and it may not get better. Danny Finkelstein, a Tory peer, and the Times today said exactly that. It may not get better. It does. It looks like it's getting worse each time. And you know, the Mail has John Curtis, who's probably the premier pollster. Sorry to Rawlings and Thrasher, saying it's 99% certain now Labour will win. And Starmer will be in number 10. And you can get a few people on a plane to Rwanda, but I don't think I'll get you anywhere in the polls now, because the election, the 2 big issues are going to be the economy and the state of public services, particularly the NHS, where we saw the satisfaction ratings down from 70% in 2010 to 24% now. Waiting lists at a record level. 0 poll bounce from 2 national insurance.
Well, we've actually went down.
Absolutely, yeah, nothing for it. You get to May, even if the Tories manage to hang on to the West Midlands and Tees Valley, they're two big mayoral seats, as it were, they're going to lose the Blackpool South by-election. So, you know, they might say, oh, we've done all right in the West Midlands and the Tees Valley. It's not going to be a wipeout, but losing Blackpool South up in the, you know, what they call the Red Wall, going to say, well, Sunak's on his way out at number 10. I can see the reasons for holding it in June and July. I can see why some Tory MPs think that. Get it over and done with, and we're going to lose. Let's start again.
And things are getting worse. We've seen some polling showing that Reform have now overtaken men as overtaken the Tories with men. So men are more likely to vote. Oh no, most of it more likely to vote Labour, but and the Tories are less popular than Reform among men. I mean, that's deeply worrying. And as we've said, they've got to the lowest poll level that Liz Truss had when everything was going really badly wrong. And if you're looking at those polls and you've got Reform on the rise, what do you do? Do you go now? There's so much talk of the election potentially being an extinction-level event for the Tories, that they could lose so many seats that the party itself is under threat. If you're Rishi Sunak and you have a real duty towards your party, actually, do you go soon?
I still think he's better to try and hang on and hope something happens.
Okay,
I don't know what.
if he can.
Well, if he can, because after May, there could be another attempt to get shot of him.
Yeah, we'll come on to the King's Easter message in the new photo a bit later on, but let's just stick with politics. The Times, which I know you won't see because it's just in, also leading on politics. In a sense, this is praise from Sir Keir Starmer for Boris Johnson, not something possibly you'd expect to have heard. Kevin, why don't you kick off on this one?
Well, he's trolling Rishi Sunak, isn't he? I mean, he's never had a good word to say for Boris Johnson at all. He used to paint him as a lying tool rag over Partygate and COVID, and constantly attacked him over not building the 40 new hospitals, never going to exist, and levelling up just being a slogan, a gimmick with no intention of delivering. This is quite a change now. The only reason he's saying it because he knows it'll just add to, well, I suspect, unless he's had a bang on the head, or he's having one of his like Thatcher moments when you flirt with one of your opponents, one of their idols. I think it's just he and Angela Rayner, who've written for the Labour's deputy leader, who've written a joint piece for the Times, are basically just picking out a scab, a Tory scab.
If you think about the things that were rolled back from Boris Johnson's policies, net zero timeline being one, for example, HS2 being another, and indeed levelling up as well.
Social care.
The money's still, being committed.
Yeah, social care. Remember, there's a national insurance increase to pay for social care, and that got cancelled, and now they want to. They've cooked national insurance and want to get shot of it.
Yeah. Let's talk sewage, not related to what we were just talking about. Let's get to the...
Can I just say on this one, though, it's quite damning that... it is quite a damning piece because he's blaming Rishi Sunak, who was Chancellor when Boris Johnson came up with all this levelling up agenda that was quite popular in the country. He's blaming Rishi Sunak for killing it at birth and not providing the cash for it, which feeds into this idea that, Labour are trying to pay Rishi Sunak as the Chancellor, who won't cough up money for public services.
He's the accountant, effectively, right?
The accountant who withheld the money that... Boris Johnson had the right medicine, but Rishi Sunak prevents it being administered. It's quite a powerful attack.
Pressure on the government too, and indeed water companies on sewage. I think, people cannot believe this is happening, and that actually the predictions were that it was going to get wetter, and, why there is not sort of storage, disposal, and mechanisms, really, to stop us putting sewage into our waterways.
Yeah, so 14,000 storm overflows in England. The use of them up 54% of 464,056 of 464,056 times. They were supposed to be there for exceptional moments. Yeah. And that's just become regular. Is it 4 million hours worth? The 3.6 million hours worth of sewage going into rivers and seas. The privatised water industry in England has got a lot to answer for and has got away with polluting our waterways. A lot of complaints too about Wales and Scotland. It's got to be conceded where they're publicly owned or community owned, as I like to call it.
I mean, interesting for The Guardian to put sort of Oxbridge on the front cover, but the point is that
most of the
rowers...
people who went... I'm not sure about the editor this time.
Yeah, but rowers have been
it's a bastion of Oxbridge here, The Guardian.
Rowers have been told to cover up sores because of, you know, potential risk of E. coli. And, you know, my children both did a triathlon in waterways last year, both got sick, gave it to me in the other half, and we were all sick. And that was suggested E. coli from heavy rainfall as well. So this is, you know, we're starting to see impacts of it. Right, we can take a break. Sorry, I know you're both about to speak.
She's about to.
I know, apologies. Coming up, we will reflect on the King, the new picture, and the words as well from him as his treatment continues. The King urging kindness in his Easter message. I'll talk more about that in just a moment.
Well, we don't know from the study fully quite what they made as being lifestyle changes, of course, alongside. People make good changes after they make good exercise changes. So if you are exercising more, you tend to have a little less alcohol, you drink less in the evening, you eat better diet and so on. But the key thing really is when you start to get yourself moving, when you start to get outside walking, that's what the participants were doing in the research study, you're raising your hormone levels, you're raising your serotonin levels. And that's quite important because serotonin is a precursor to melatonin, and melatonin makes us fall asleep. So by the nature of just literally moving somewhat frequently, you're changing your hormone structure, you're increasing your blood circulation. You're also, of course, burning off some energy, so you're going to get more tired by the evening and fall asleep more quickly. So there's a few things all combined together. But as I say, people do make great changes in their lifestyle alongside exercise changes. It's a real trigger to making positive overall life balance movement. So the test results are not entirely surprising. It's good to get reinforcement of the fact that it's another good reason to get out there and do some exercise. I'd say that that small amount per week is a nice start point. And in reality, we're designed to work much more than that. We should be working in some form 4 or 5 days per week, even on a low level of going for fast-paced walking, this zone 2 cardio training approach, where you're working at a medium level. It's great for us, both in terms of hormone balance, in terms of our overall sense of well-being. We do have a need to try and create hormone release in our system. And part of the way of doing that really is not just this exercise of going for low-grade cardio, but lifting heavy things, moving heavy objects, being tested. Our bodies are designed to be tested regularly. And without that, we just start to work into a different life pattern. And our sleep cycles rely on that exact setup. Always lifestyle changes produce this very nice upward spiral of effect on your system. So the more that you do, the more you want to make changes, your body's allowed to make changes, it grows to make changes, and then it gets easier and easier, results get better and better. And likewise, when you do nothing, it spirals downwards in the exact same way. So we've got to make sure we have your positive action plans. And yes, what's important too, is overnight, if you're not sleeping well, you can't reproduce another hormone, cortisol. And we need cortisol, it's our stress hormone, to feel awake and feel alive and feel regenerated. Now, without good sleep, you can't get that. So you start the day feeling tired and you reach for what? More coffee, more sugared foods to get a bit of a kicker. And then you're fighting a battle all day.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, Kevin Maguire and Claire Ellicott. Welcome to you. So a new photo then released of the King ahead of Easter, effectively, a Maunday service message as well. The King is to thank all those who extend the hand of friendship in times of need, in an Easter message following the royal family's double diagnosis with cancer, and clearly a great deal of sympathy across the nation for
Yeah.
both the King and for Kate.
Yes, so he speaks of extending the hand of friendships. This was after his diagnosis. I think it was recorded in mid-March. The picture would have been taken in mid-March, and before the Princess of Wales diagnosis. But he obviously knows she's been ill, and he knows that she'll have to speak to the public at some point. And it's quite a poignant message. Urging everyone to show kindness, to come together ahead of Easter. It's a nice picture of him, but he doesn't look well, and there has been such a huge outpouring of sympathy for the whole family and everything they've been through. So it's a very touching message.
If that picture has been released, it's an official photograph, if it's been released to get him sympathy, it will get him sympathy.
Yeah.
If it's released for reassurance, it won't, because he really does not look well. Now, of course, he's got cancer. He's having treatment. He's not said which cancer and what stage it is, but he does not look well. If you look at the lips, they look incredibly dry. His eyes look very
some
red.
of that can just be winter, can't it? People...
Yeah, we are in spring now, but or middle of March would be classed as spring.
It's reassuring that he's going to this walk round, that he's going to attend the service.
On Easter Sunday.
Yes.
In St George's Chapel.
So he and the Queen will be attending that.
But he would normally have attended the Maundy service where you hand out Maundy money. It's been always a really big thing for the Queen to do.
I remember a mum doing it often.
Yes,
his mum,
right.
when she was quite old and frail, but she still did it. But now, of course, he may have to shield to some extent because his immune system might be reduced. So he'll have to take precautions. So even in the walk around, he may just be shuffling a bit with his hand in a pocket.
Yes, and we saw Camilla, didn't we, as well, in a walk around, as you put it today, in Shrewsbury. I think you say Shrewsbury, but and handed a lovely message from members of the public. Send our love to Kate, to which she said that Kate would be thrilled to receive it, obviously. So she's still out meeting members of the public, which is a very brave thing to do when this is happening to your husband and to your family members.
Yeah, I suppose somebody's got to go out. They've got no one left, have they? I mean, that's it. If you think he's ill, Kate's ill, her husband is at her side, Andrew's disgraced, shamed, should be in the Tower of London. Anne can only do
be nice
so
at this
much.
stage, okay.
Well, not about him. The rest of the family you can have some time for, but not for him. Not for. Sorry, actually, you're right. You just want to stop me, don't you?
Yes,
No.
Well, it's good to see the Queen stepping up. She's taking the role for her husband and, giving the public reassurance that the royal family's still there and still doing its duty.
Where's Harry? Oh, sorry, I don't you.
I'm going to move on. Both of you, thank you very much indeed. Kevin, Claire, thank you. See you in the 11 for more. Obviously, here's the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
So the next few days will be cool, unsettled, with Storm Nelson bringing gales to the south, but it's looking milder and drier for Easter. So northern and western parts will have a mostly fine start tomorrow with a patchy frost, while the windy south will see prolonged rain and hill snow from East Anglia to North Wales. There will be showers near the Channel too. So southern Britain will see rain giving way to heavy showers tomorrow morning, some prolonged, while the central UK will see rain and hill snow moving in. Northern Scotland and Ireland look mainly dry, although Waterford and Wexford will turn wet. Very windy in the south, 70-mile-an-hour gusts near Channel coasts. Showers will develop more widely later on as more general rain over central parts edges into central Scotland, but most of Ireland and the far north look dry. Friday, Good Friday, will bring sunshine and widespread showers again.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.